prosecution, I'd like to call Mickey Keenan to the stand. Chris Grant for the prosecution. May I proceed?
Yes.
Good morning, Officer Keenan.
Morning.
Please state your name, spelling your last for the record.
Yes, my name is Mickey Keenan. That's Keenan.
Officer Keenan, what is it that you do for a living?
Well, I'm a detective in the Special Investigations Division of the Midland State Police Department.
What education do you have that allows you to hold that position?
Well, and once I enrolled in the Midland State Police Academy, I quickly rose to become the top of my class. And after I graduated, the day after I graduated as the valedictorian, I signed on with the force immediately.
Now, you work for the Special Investigations Division. What makes that division different from other divisions within the Midland State Police Department?
Well, what really sets us apart from the other divisions within the department is the number of cases that we have to go undercover for.
Do officers in the Special Investigations Division have to go through any specialized training to work in that division?
Yes, the training that we undergo is quite extensive. We have to learn everything about proper documentation, handling OIAs, how not to induce criminal activity, and proper use of the Reed technique.
Would you explain to me just what OIAs are?
Yes, OIAs are otherwise illegal activity. Now what this means is that it is okay to do something that would be otherwise illegal so long as it falls under two things. So long as it furthers your investigation and you receive authorization from your supervisor.
Now, you also mentioned something called the Reed technique. Would you please explain what that is to the jury?
Yes, the Reed technique is a method of questioning used by investigators during their undercover operations.
And how do you use the Reed technique in your investigation?
Well, we ask the suspect non-accusatory questions so that they feel comfortable in admitting and acknowledging the truth of criminal activities.
Is there any documentation of your training?
The documentation for my training is quite extensive.
Would you be able to provide that documentation here in court today?
Well, I'm currently undercover in another very sensitive investigation, so all of my documentation, along with the other officers on the case, is being withheld from public records for both my safety and the other officers.
Officer Keenan, throughout your time in the Special Investigations Division, how many undercover cases have you worked on?
Well, the Covington Bancroft case would be my 13th case working undercover.
And what kind of cases do you usually work on while undercover?
I've worked everything from white-collar crime to human trafficking to drug trafficking to organized crime as well.
Now, you mentioned that the Bancroft-Covington case was your 13th undercover case. How are you involved in this investigation?
Well, I was involved. I was placed undercover in July of 2013, and then my involvement ended when my investigation was finished in April of 2015.
What led you to the Midlands Gambling Commission?
The department had begun receiving tips about possible corruption within the Midlands Gambling Commission, and I was placed undercover to determine whether or not those tips had any validity behind them.
Did those tips have any validity behind them?
Yes, they did.
Does the corruption in the department tie back to the defendant and Chase Covington in any way?
Yes, it tied them both together.
Officer Keenan, please explain to the court how you began your investigation.
Well, I began by placing myself undercover as a staffer for Chase Covington and keeping an eye out for possible corruption within the Midlands Gambling Commission.
How was Chase Covington involved with the Gambling Commission?
He was actually the chair of the Midlands Gambling Commission, which puts him in a pretty powerful position.
By a pretty powerful position, what exactly do you mean?
Well, the commission consists of 3 commissioners, and from everything that I had learned, and to the best of my knowledge, the other 2 commissioners were not very fond of each other, and pretty much always voted in opposition. So that gave Chase the final word as the swing vote in almost all situations.
Did Avery Bancroft play any role in your decision to join the Midlands Gambling Commission?
No, absolutely not. I went undercover to do my job, which was to investigate the commission, which Avery Bancroft was not a part of. At that point, Avery Bancroft wasn't even on my radar.
Then how did you begin investigating Avery Bancroft?
Well, that goes back to February of 2015. I was in Chase Covington's office, and I overheard a phone call between her and Mr. Bancroft. The conversation was on speakerphone, so I was able to hear everything.
What was said during this phone call?
Well, Mr. Bancroft started the conversation by saying, "It's good to hear from you, Mr. Covington. I just saw the announcement, and I'm putting together a proposal, and I wanted to meet and talk with you to, grease the wheels."
How did Chase respond to those statements?
Chase's tone got very harsh. She ended that conversation immediately.
How did you proceed with your investigation after this phone call?
Well, that was exactly what we were looking for. So at that point, I reached out to Mr. Bancroft's executive assistant, Corey Hyde. See, Corey was exactly the kind of person that I thought would be perfect to bring on him for my investigation. He knew about all of Mr. Bancroft's meetings, set those meetings up, and was able to schedule meetings for him. So I recruited his help in setting up a meeting between myself, Miss Covington, Mr. Bancroft, and Corey Hyde.
This meeting that you were present in, what day did this meeting take place?
This would have been on April 13th.
And what was discussed during this meeting?
Well, for starters, Mr. Bancroft and Miss Covington just began to discuss their proposal. However, when Miss Covington began to talk about money, Mr. Bancroft said...
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Your Honor, the witness has not said any statements from Chase Covington at all. The witness has just said that Chase Covington talked about money. He didn't say a statement.
Please don't answer with an out-of-court statement. And try and be careful with your questions, unless you have an objection to unless you have an exception to the hearsay rule.
Yes, Your Honor.
Don't volunteer out-of-court statements unless you're prompted to do so by the question.
Yes, sir.
Now, once again, Officer Keenan, may you please tell the jury what was discussed during this meeting?
Yes, initially it was all about the proposals. However, after a little while, the conversation shifted, and Miss Bancroft said, "It's all about the money with you."
What happened after this?
Well, that was another sign of exactly what we're supposed to look for as investigators. So at that point, I picked up a napkin and a pen and slid them across the table to Mr. Bancroft.
What was the defendant's response to your actions?
He picked up the napkin and began writing on it. He wrote yes equals $, and then 150K, or yes equals $150,000, and then slid it across the table to Miss Covington.
Would you recognize a copy of this napkin if I had it here to show to you today?
Yeah, I was sitting right there when she wrote on it, or when he wrote on it.
Let the record reflect that I'm approaching opposing counsel to witness an intervention time. Your Honor, require a courtesy copy?
Yeah, I think
I'm sorry, this is... Is that a fair and accurate copy? What is that I've just handed you?
This would be a picture of the napkin that Avery Bancroft wrote on during the April 13th meeting.
Does it appear to be a fair and accurate copy of that napkin?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, at this time, prosecution moves to admit prosecution wanted to evidence.
objection.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance. The bribe has not been contested in this case, and this just goes for furtherance of the bribe, and therefore is not relevant to this case.
Overruled.
Thank you. Now, after Avery Bancroft wrote on this napkin, what did he do with it?
Well, he slid it across the table to Miss Covington, who picked it up and looked at it, and then slid it right back.
What was Avery Bancroft's reaction to do with that napkin?
As soon as Miss Covington slid it back, Avery crossed out the 150K, and below it wrote $250K. So now the napkin read yes equals $250,000, and slid it back across the table to Miss Covington again.
After Avery Bancroft slid that napkin back to Miss Covington, what did Miss Covington do with it?
He picked it up and put it in her pocket.
Now, did you force Avery Bancroft to write on that napkin?
No, I didn't.
So after Miss Covington put that napkin in her pocket, what happened after that?
There was a knock on the door, and the the person who was there was the bellhop, Devin Del Sesto. He had brought up a wine and cheese platter.
Now, was that the end of the meeting? Did anything go on further in the meeting?
Well, after that, after the bellhop came in and had left, Chase got really nervous and she ended the meeting immediately.
Objection, speculation to Chase Covington getting really nervous.
It's in the witness's rationally based perception to be able to tell if someone around him is nervous. He could be able to look at somebody and tell if they're nervous.
Overall, you can cover that in cross-examination.
Now I'll ask you again. How did the meeting end?
Well, after the bellhop had interrupted, Chase got very nervous. She was sweating, and she ended the meeting immediately.
How did Avery Bancroft respond to Chase Covington's concerns?
Avery tried to reassure Ms. Covington. He said that everybody at the Black Bear that worked there knew how to be discreet, but Chase still wasn't having any of it.
Did you have any other meetings between the defendant and the chair of the gambling commission?
There was supposed to be one more meeting, but Chase Covington never came to that one.
And when was this supposed to take place?
That was on April 16th.
Officer Keenan, are you aware of what this trial is about?
Yes, Avery Bancroft admitted to bribing Chase Covington, the chair of the Midlands Gambling Commission, but he's accusing me of forcing him to do it.
And what is your response to that?
I would never do that. I wouldn't throw away 2 years of my investigation and endanger my career by doing something like that.
Thank you, Officer Keenan. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Keenan, you received an email from your chief of police on his first day in office.
Yes, I did.
And you would recognize a copy of that email if I showed it to you in court today?
Yes, I would.
Honor, permission to approach opposing counsel and show them Defense Exhibit A. Permission to approach the witness with the same.
Yes.
I've just handed you Defense Exhibit A. Is this the email that Francis Kimball wrote to you?
Yes, it is.
Is it a fair and accurate copy?
Yes.
Do you have any reason to believe it was anyone else besides Francis Kimball who wrote this email?
No, I do not.
Your Honor, at this time, defense now moves Defense Exhibit A into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, I have an objection, Your Honor. I'm objecting on hearsay of that document.
Your Honor, may I respond?
I'd just like to hear the basis for the hearsay.
Well, that document is an out-of-court statement from the chief of police, and it's going to prove the truth of the matter asserted. I'm pretty sure what opposing counsel is trying to do, they're trying to use that email to show that Mickey Keenan had extra incentive to crack down on high-profile criminals, and they're trying to use that email to prove the truth value that Mickey Keenan entrapped Avery Bancroft.
May I respond?
Yes.
These statements are not being used for the truth of the matter, but the effect that they had on the listener, Mickey Keenan.
Yeah, overruled.
Now, in this email, Francis Kimball tells you to crack down on corruption.
Yes, he does.
He said, Midlands is corrupt, and everyone knows it. It's just your job to find the evidence to prove it.
Yes, he did.
So, at this point, you did not have any evidence that Midlands was corrupt.
No, that's why I was placed undercover, to determine whether or not those accusations had any validity behind them.
Now, in this email, your chief also writes to be newsworthy. He says, let's reel in the big fish. Did I
Yes,
read
he
that
does.
correctly?
Yes, he does.
Finally, he says to do whatever it takes. We need to be innovative and we need to be relentless.
Yes, he also tells us to not break the law, but everything else is on the table.
Now, you replied to this email, thanks, Chief. I'm so glad to know that new management is supporting the types of investigations that matter. Let's be legendary.
Yes, corruption's a very serious issue within the state. Tackling that is very important.
But you wanted to be legendary.
I wanted to make a difference in the state.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness, retrieve evidence, and tender to the bench.
Sure.
Now, Mr. Keenan, after you received this email, you were thrilled.
I got a chance to do some high-profile work, yes.
Because in your chief's own words, you had the chance to catch a big fish.
I had the chance to make a difference within the state, yeah.
But to answer my question, you had a chance to catch a big fish.
Those were the chief's words, yes.
And you started your investigation in July 1st, 2013.
Yes, that's correct.
But for a year and a half, you found no evidence of illegal activity.
No, I was simply surveilling it. I didn't find anything at that point.
And in October of 2014, the Midlands Gambling Commission announced that they would be giving out casino licenses.
Yes, that's true.
But in October, you found no evidence of Avery Bancroft bribing Chase Covington.
No, it wasn't until February that I'd seen any sort of indication of that.
So it wasn't until February, months after the Midlands Gambling Commission had announced that they were going to release casino license, that you had any suspicion of illegal activity.
No, and it wasn't, I hadn't taken any actions until that point, but after I had heard that, that was when I began to take steps during my investigation.
And one of those steps was to recruit Corey Hyde as your informant.
Yes, it was.
And you told Corey Hyde that she had violated gambling regulations.
Yes, I did.
But you had no evidence that Corey Hyde had done anything illegal.
No, but it is all right. It's all right to lie to and recruit informants. The department really draws issue when we start lying to the suspects in the case, and Corey Hyde was not a suspect.
So you admit that you lied to Corey Hyde to get him to be your informant.
Yes, this was an example of an OIA that I explained earlier.
And you pressured Corey Hyde to be your informant.
Yes, the pressuring of informants is all right. Again, it's when we start pressuring the suspects that's a problem.
Now you had Corey Hyde wear a wire to the March 31st meeting that you had with Avery Bancroft.
Yes, I did.
And you would recognize the transcript of this meeting if I showed it to you in court today?
Yeah, I was there. I would recognize it.
Your Honor, permission to approach opposing counsel in the witness interim with defense exhibit B.
Thank you.
I've just handed you defense exhibit B. Is this a transcript from the March 31st meeting?
Yes, it appears to be.
And is it a fair and accurate copy?
Yes, I believe it is.
Your Honor, at this time, defense now moves defense exhibit B into evidence.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Admitted.
Now, in this meeting, Mr. Bancroft began by talking about the logistics of his proposal.
Yes, he did.
He talked about the building, what he would do to have the best proposal.
Yes, that's correct.
And then you say, the sticking point is pretty obvious though, why should we let you have 2 casino licenses?
Yeah, I said that.
And Mr. Bancroft responds about why he's the best. But then Corey Hyde interrupts him and says, I think what they want to know is whether you'll do anything to sweeten the pot.
Yeah, we're taught at the academy to kind of drop subtle hints during these conversations. So that was what Corey Hyde was doing.
So Corey Hyde was acting as your informant, doing as you had instructed him to say something about sweetening the pot in this meeting.
Yes, I had to provide some sort of instruction for Corey Hyde so that he wouldn't endanger my cover in any way.
So after Corey Hyde drops this subtle hint about sweetening the pot, Mr. Bancroft responds, well, I guess I could add a conference space.
Yes.
And then you say, let's try this again. What are you willing to do to make this happen?
Yeah, that's another example of the hints that we're supposed to drop. We learned all of this as part of the extensive training that we undergo at the academy.
And once again, Mr. Bancroft responds of why he has the best proposal.
Yes.
And you say, you know that's not what I meant. Here in Midlands, it's not enough to have a good business plan. You have to go the extra mile and make sure everyone is happy.
Yes, that's just exactly like the training that we received at the academy.
And it wasn't until you said this that Chase Covington's name was even mentioned.
Yes, after this, Bancroft asks if everybody's included in Chase Covington.
And you say you especially need to make Chase Covington happy.
Yes.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness for chief evidence and tender to the bench.
Sure.
Now, after this meeting, Corey Hyde told you that he no longer wanted to be your informant.
That is correct.
And you told Mr. Hyde that backing out would be the worst decision of his life.
Yes.
Now, you also went to an April 13th meeting with Avery Bancroft, Chase Covington, and Corey Hyde.
Yes, that is correct.
And at this meeting, when you slid over a napkin to Avery Bancroft, his first reaction was to wipe his face with it and put it back down.
Yeah, he did that at first.
It was only when you slid over another napkin and said it's always about the money, did Mr. Bancroft write a number down on that napkin.
Yeah, I was using Avery's own words. See, he had said that exact line earlier in the conversation, and I was just repeating it to him when I slid the napkin across.
But it was only when that you said it's always about the money did Mr. Bancroft write down a number.
Yes, but I never told him to write anything on the napkin.
You just said it's always about the money.
Yes,
And after this, you also had a meeting on April 16th.
that's correct.
But Chase Covington didn't come to this meeting.
No, she did not come to this meeting at all.
And Avery Bancroft left this meeting.
Yes, he did.
And at one point, you got up to use the restroom.
Yes, that's true.
And you came back and you saw that Chase Covington and Avery Bancroft had left this meeting.
Yes, I saw that.
And you were furious.
Yeah, I was a little upset that Corey Hyde didn't fill me in on where anybody was going or whether anybody was leaving.
But you were not just a little upset, you were furious.
I was mad, yes.
You were furious because you had worked too long and too hard on this case.
I was furious because an informant's supposed to keep me informed of what's going on.
But in your own words, you had worked too long and too hard on this case.
Yes, for one informant to mess it up like that, it's frustrating.
And you were so furious with Corey Hyde that you told him if he didn't find Avery Bancroft or Chase Covington, you would personally make sure he went to jail.
Yes, this was supposed to be the meeting. If something were to happen, this was probably going to be the meeting there. And I wanted to make sure that we kept tabs on them so that we could catch them.
You wanted to make sure you caught Avery Bancroft.
If anything were to happen, yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Counsel, I don't recall you offering that first document into evidence.
Francis Kimball,
Right.
moving it into evidence?
I don't
Oh, with
recall.
a hearsay objection? Moving it into evidence, and then there was a hearsay objection to
There
Francis
there was
Kimball.
no objection to that coming into evidence?
He objected the
You
hearsay,
overruled.
was effect on the
You
list.
overruled on that.
I remember overruling an objection, but I'm just saying I remember you actually
Oh,
offering
okay,
it to evidence.
may I move defense exhibit A into
Is there
evidence?
an objection?
Oh, no objection.
Okay, it's in evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor, no further questions.
Recross, Your Honor?
Sure.
Officer Keenan, did you force Avery Bancroft to write on that napkin?
No, I never told her to write anything on that napkin. Not the first time she wrote on it and not the second time that he wrote on it either.
Thank you, Officer Keenan. No further questions.
Recross?
No redirect, no recross, Your Honor.
Thank you. Officer King.
Thank you, Your Honor.